Hey, you like cars? Yes. Back again. Another glorious episode of the greatest automotive podcast is upon you now. And that is CarQuicks Podcast, episode 86. It's Cameron Biggs, your host again. I'm back for another one, back for another week, back with some more automotive news. And how are y'all doing out there? How's your feeling? How's your feeling? How is your feelings? I guess maybe. How are your feelings doing? How's your family doing? The loved ones, the children, significant others. How's life? Hope it's going well. Mine's going well. Can't complain. Even if I could, it's not big enough to complain. And as they say, nobody's coming to save you. That sometimes you got to kind of say that to yourself. But regardless, everything else is going according to plan. We got some good news this week, so we're going to drive right into it. We're going to talk about some news I've been reading, some ideas, some updates, car updates, things like that. So let's just drive right into my favorite part of the week, okay? Let's get to it. So we're going to talk about Volvo. I was talking about them last episode because they were discontinuing one of the greatest performance wagons that we have in the U.S., was a V60 Polestar. And unfortunately, like I've said before, the U.S. market, we just don't care about hatchbacks and wagons as much as we should, considering how efficient they are and how practical they are. But Volvo right now is starting to introduce more of their EV cars. And one of them is the ES90. And the ES90 is their flagship EV sedan that is coming out end of 2026 or early end of 2025 actually to 2026, and it's already on sale for you to kind of start ordering it if you live in another country like in Europe or UK. But let's talk about their variants they have. So this is an all-electric sedan. It is actually, I want to discuss the looks of it first because I have some opinions on it. So if you look at this picture here again, if you're not watching a video format of this podcast, I really don't know what you're doing. Add it to your normal, listening pleasures, okay? Sometimes listen to audio, sometimes listen to video. But like and subscribe regardless. Anyways, so this is like a lifted sedan, right? It's like the Toyota Crown, where you get this funky, it's not a SUV, it's not a sedan, but it's a lifted, like it needs more ground clearance, so it has this weird kind of stance to it. That's what this looks like. And it's squared off. It's not a bad look. Like if you think about all the other sedans that Volvo has designed, this matches what they do. It's clean. It matches their design language. It's familiar to their model lineup. I do think that it looks fairly clean on the outside. If I'm looking at the pictures right now, I think it does look good. I just think that the stance is odd because if you're going to have an electric SUV, which I guarantee they're going to have, then why is the sedan trying to be lifted in a way to have more ground clearance? It's the same critique I have with the Toyota Crown, which is, okay, if you're trying to make a sedan that is above, let's say, the Avalon or what the Avalon was, or a more luxury one, then okay, it makes sense. But for Toyota's part in this little discussion, if you looked at the Toyota Crown Sport that looked like a Ferrari Purosangue, everybody was like, how come we didn't get that car? Well, nobody cares about sedans that much in the U.S. market outside of the big sellers like a Camry and an Accord. So what Volvo's doing here, I guess, is to separate themselves from looking like any other EV sedan, but I think they would have already accomplished that by the mere fact of how they design their cars. That's just my opinion. But on the variants they have, there's going to be three. It's called the single motor, which is a 330 horsepower, 355 foot-pound torque model with a 92 kilowatt-hour battery and a 300 kilowatt charging system. Then there is a twin motor. Twin motor has 440 horsepower, 495 foot-pounds of torque. They got throwing a lot in there. And then there's a twin motor performance, which is a 670 horsepower, 635 foot-pounds of torque model. Now, I don't know if that's going to have Polestar's name on it or anything like that, or if it's just going to be some T variant or just a version of it that's a high performance one in the ES90. They haven't discussed that part of it. Both of the twin motor ones run a 106 kilowatt hour battery, and it can charge up to 350 kilowatts. And the range estimated from each model is 404 miles to 435. That's not bad, because one of the things that is going to always stop people from getting into EVs is the range. How far can it go? Can I get to where I need to be? Am I going to have to sit there and charge it? I'm not saying that answers all the questions and the concerns people have with EVs, especially when it comes to how much it costs to charge EVs and how long you have to wait, and if the charging system is packed or if it's available. There's many variables in it, but for just starting off with the mileage, they're doing well with that. And so that is how they're going to start this off. And then they showed off the interior. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not that sold on this interior. And I'm going to tell you why. I've had a critique many times when it comes to interiors of EVs, when it comes to them trying to be very minimalist. And one of the critiques is that everything looks like it is a lazy effort. And when I mean, let me not say that it didn't take some designer to kind of figure out this interior. What I'm saying is, if I'm looking at what Volvo did, if you see here on this picture, it looks like a screen or a tablet leaning against the dashboard. Now, I know it's all integrated in the back and it's connected and it's not in the stationary, but again, it's tablet on dash. It's the design of it is minimalist, but it just lacks character. And Volvo is better at this than what they're showing here, in my opinion. This follows the same path of Tesla, where they just put the screen on the dashboard, small, slim dash, vents on the side, singular display for the driver, and then they just put like certain materials, cloths, textile, things that just have a nice touch to them, and they say, I'm done. And I'm like, well, considering the fact that this ES90 is their flagship EV sedan, I would imagine that this is going to cost somewhere north of $60,000, $70,000, and this interior just doesn't match that. I just think Volvo has a better representation of their design, especially from the country they're at and what they do. I know the minimalist look is part of their culture and part of their design language, but I just think it could have been a little bit better executed in this particular design for what they have here. My biggest critique is the screen. I just don't like the fact that it looks like it's leaning against the dashboard. Like, I'm like, cool, but it looks like you could take it off and move it, or that it can pivot or go to landscape mode or something like that, but it probably can't. So then it looks kind of weird when it's on the dashboard. So that's my critique with it. There isn't any other news when it comes to what this car is going to officially cost, or what model colors, or how the trims are going to look, or what options you have. But they did say that if you're in Europe and the UK, you can order it right now. And in the US, we have until the end of 2025, early 26, when this is going to come around. So Volvo is working their way to getting more of their EV cars in there. Is that their MO? I don't know, because every car manufacturer right now has said, guess what? We were on board for the, onslaught of EV cars, but nobody's buying them. So we have to kind of dial it back. And I will say this. It is interesting that they're going with a sedan that's lifted in this manner, given, like I said before, how the US market has responded to EV sedans that are not a Model S. And Model S or the Model 3, they might sell a lot of Model 3s because the input of the price to get in is low. But it's interesting to see them take this path when I think there's going to be a fairly inexpensive car, and how often they don't sell sedans. That's what I'm saying. Now, speaking about more EVs, Cadillac released the Escalade IQL. Now, I'm talking about this one because when I was at the Houston Auto Show, I finally got to sit and see Escalade IQ, which is their all-electric version of the Escalade. And I was actually fairly impressed. Given what the interior looked like, with the gigantic, like 55-inch wraparound OLED screen on the dashboard, the way the interior looked, the sound system, how everything felt, the soft closing doors, the automatic opening closing doors, just the overall thing just looked nice. It looked impressive for a luxury SUV. Well, they've taken that a step further, and the step further they've taken is going to cost you $132,695 to begin. And that is because this is the long wheelbase version of the IQ. And so IQL, think of it, the long Escalade ESV, a Suburban, basically that. But the difference is the IQL doesn't run on the same chassis as the standard Escalade. Those run on the chassis of like a Tahoe and a Suburban, basically body on frame. The IQs run on a bespoke electric platform that is underpinning the Chevy Silverado, the Escalade IQ, the Denali EV, all of those models that are electric trucks, it's underpinning those. So this is a different chassis altogether. But for the IQL, what they have done is they've given it a twin motor electric system that makes 750 horsepower, 785 foot-pounds of torque. You can tow up to 7,500 pounds. The range is 460. That's actually a lot. And 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds in velocity max mode if you so care. And it has a 205 kilowatt hour battery, which is massive. Now, the battery is interesting because I couldn't find any information on how fast it could charge. I'm assuming that it's over 300 kilowatts because that's a lot of battery. So if you were on almost like let's say 5 miles, if you're at a standard charger and a 205 kilowatt hour battery, you're going to be kicking it there for a minute. Like you might be there for an hour or so, charging that thing up all the way. Now, 460 miles is impressive. I don't know. They never show you what the mileage is if you're actually towing something. I don't think too many people that buy Escalades are really trying to tow something. But let's just say you had a boat or something. I don't know how far your range is. I would probably cut that to like 300. You're going to lose a lot, especially considering how fast you're going to go. But the performance of it and the luxury of it, I've talked about on the Escalade IQ, is the same. Just this time you get more storage in the back. You get more of a better trunk capacity. Third row seat. If you saw my video for the Houston Auto Show, I talked about the third row seat that was in the standard IQ, and I said, this is kind of tight. I mean, you can fit back there, but it's dark and it's kind of cramped. So now you got the IQL, which gives you more space so you can have more comfortable adults sitting in the back if you need to for this setup. And what's crazy about this whole story is, in the beginning, you heard my price point, $132,000. You're like, that's absolutely nuts, which is it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I'm not going to say it's not. What's crazy, that's not the most expensive Escalade you can buy. If you have $170,000 almost, or 168, 720, rounded up to 170, that will get you into the Escalade V, the one that has a supercharged V8, which I wasn't checking for Escalade Vs. It's not in my tax bracket. So I wasn't finding out how much those things cost. $170,000 for an Escalade is bonkers, okay? But it exists. And so 132 is a deal. Now, if I was weighing the two, if I was going to say to myself, hey, CarQuicks, go get yourself an Escalade. It's that time you made it, okay? You hit the Powerball. I would probably check out the IQL. Honestly, I just thought it was really, really cool vehicle for an SUV in a big truck. And it kind of made sense. And personally, I mean, the Escalade V is cool, and I've seen plenty of videos of them modifying them. But honestly, I don't feel like smashing around in a giant brick. I mean, it feels probably as cool, but it's still going to handle like a truck. And if I'm just going to drive the family around in a big SUV, I probably want it to be as silent as possible, especially considering that the Escalade IQ runs on magnetic 4-ride, which is probably the butteriest of rides that you can get. So I'd rather have that if I'm going to haul the family around. That's how I would think about it. Now, continuing on, more EV news, kind of an EV-packed episode, okay? Bear with me. We'll get to the, sports cars whenever they show up again, okay? Toyota's working on it, all right? But Volkswagen previewed the ID.1. Now, this is kind of substantial because I've talked about this before. The future of EVs is not solely, but there's a very big dependence on the cost, okay? The cost has to be cheap enough to people to warrant some of the factors they have to decide with if they're going to deal with when it comes to the EV. So Volkswagen has designed what is right now being said is to be a sub $22,000 EV. It's a hatchback. Looks like this. Now, I'm not mad at the look. I actually think this looks pretty cool. That's what I'm a hatchback lover, okay? I like the way it looks. It gives me somewhat of a GTI look. And I do wonder if what this has ultimately has underpinnings of what the GTI EV is going to have. And because it looks like it kind of slightly, I'm thinking that there are some elements of what this is going to make its way to the GTI. It just looks too close. I mean, what are the hatchbacks they have in their history? It's like Rabbit, GTI. So I'm like looking at this like, I kind of see some elements there, but the one thing that is big about this is that it's not coming to the U.S. Now, of course, everybody's going to be like, what's the point of Volkswagen doing all this stuff? And they want EVs and people that have them, they're not going to bring it to the U.S. There's a couple important factors when it comes to this particular model, which is why they're not bringing it here, which I understand completely. One is the range. So the range is 155 miles, this is made for small towns in Europe, especially Paris, some small town in Italy, Austria. Like, it's somewhere where there isn't a need for a large amount of range. Let's say 100-mile radius. It won't do well. Not to say that there aren't cities in the U.S. like Manhattan or L.A. or even inside of Houston proper that you couldn't use a EV that had a 155-mile range and be perfectly fine. You can, but the U.S. market just doesn't respond well to seeing that type of range. You only get the small subset of people that buy it, and then the rest of it is kind of going to sit on lots. And then the most biggest factor, the range you can kind of finesse and figure out what it fits in your life. The top speed you can't, especially not out here. The top speed is 81 miles per hour. Now, I don't know where you live, but in the especially in Texas, if you jump on I-10 with only a top speed of 81, I'm not saying that folks don't just do 60, 65 all day long. I'm just saying topping out at 81 is crazy. Okay, you're in California doing that on one of them highways. It's just not gonna work out that well for you. I just think that, and not to say that you won't get to 81 like that. If it's an EV, it has instant torque. So I'm sure that 81 shows up in a swift manner, but it may not be enough for people to feel comfortable on highways. And I'm sure somebody's gonna argue saying, "Yo, the speed limit ain't even over 60. It's 65. You don't even need. It's another 20 miles per hour. You should be good," which is true. Me personally, no. I've cruised at above 81 plenty of times because some of the speed limits here in Texas, like where I live, is 75 miles an hour. Folks is doing 81 all day long. And then if you get in the tollway, it's 85. Okay. Folks is gonna blow. You want to be able to get on it. They'll be like, nah, stop it. And if you're maxing out, that means your range is just coming down because you're at full tilt. But as far as the car altogether, I do see some resemblance of what the GTI probably could be like if they're trying to follow whatever they're doing with their EVs and a hatchback. It ain't gonna be too far fetched off of what this looks like, in my opinion. It's probably gonna be more aggressive, different lights and stuff like that. But I'm looking at some elements there. Now the interior is, I kind of like this interior because it does match what Volkswagen has done. It's simple, it's not that much going on. But I also think that for the price point, this is where being minimal, I think, makes more sense. Like, you obviously, if it's under 30,000, that is a time when I can say, hey, I'm just gonna put the screen on the dash. I'm gonna get you little vents, put some cloth materials, some nice seats, some different colors, kind of spruce it up a bit. That makes sense. But when you start talking about cars that cost $70,000, $80,000, and I jump inside and it's the same design as the sub $22,000 one, then I think we have gone too far into the push for things being so minimal and only having the screen on the dash. So they haven't said when this is going to come out. They're working on it. This was just strictly like a concept of idea that they're putting out there. But if they're working it for the markets inside of Europe or the UK or any other country that has a very small town, then I can see it working for them because this is what they have done for years. They've had different hatchbacks from a variety of companies that we never got in the US because we just don't respond to small hatchbacks the same way that they have before. So it's going to be good to see what they come with next. However much I dislike the fact that the GTI currently we have now is the last gas ice power iteration, or maybe they change their tune later, I am still intrigued to see whatever they come up with when it comes to the EV one, to just see what they do. Now, getting into like some other smaller cars that are coming out, I didn't realize that this company was actually working on a replacement for this, but Nissan was shown driving a camouflage version of the 2026 Sentra. I'll be perfectly frank. I thought the Sentra was like out to the pasture. I thought it was done. I didn't realize that they were going to try to camouflage it and make up a new model. But if I think about what they have to do and what they have to get through, it does make sense. Nissan right now has a bunch of financial things going on. Okay, they're supposed to merge with Honda. That fell apart. Who knows what the future looks like? It's just a bunch of things that are just cloudy right now. But if you're gonna do something, you want to just produce a product that people are gonna buy. And if the Sentra is the only thing selling because the Altima and the Versa are coming to a close at the end of 2025 model year, then you got to put something out on the ground so that people can buy it and have some type of flow into your dealerships, because they're going to start talking about, why are we selling cars? We're about to start suing you. There's nothing here. Look at the news about Mitsubishi dealerships. And many of them have been coming forward saying there's nothing to sell outside of an Outlander. An Eclipse Cross isn't moving. We're upset. We want you to do something. You got to do, just back and forth. They're having a lot of problems with that. So Nissan is working on the Sentra, and the Sentra has design, from what I can see from the camouflage look, there's design elements that look like the Nissan Murano, the new one. Now, it is sleeker, so that is a benefit because the current Sentra to me just looks too regular traffic mundane. Like they could have at least given it a little bit of spice, a little sprinkling of seasoning in there, some sazon. Okay. If Kia can pull it off with Hyundai and everybody else with their small K4s and stuff like that, we can do it too over here at Nissan. I'm figuring they're saying that to themselves. But it has the design of like the Murano. I don't know what that's going to look like. It has a very swooping front end, even though it's camouflage. So we'll see what it's going to look like. They haven't talked about the powertrain. I would imagine it's probably the same they already have, probably some 150 horsepower inline four, just good gas mileage, nothing too extreme. I probably will never see an SER. If they made one in this model, I wouldn't even know where they pulled that from. Honestly, if they came out and said they're making a high performance Sentra, I'd be like, and what motor is going in that thing? And was it front wheel drive? You putting a limited slip in there? What are we doing? Like, I didn't even know this was a thing. So they're working on it. So you're going to see it come. But getting into something I was just talking about when it came to kind of that interior design thing and being minimal, screens on dash, the good gentleman over at Mercedes-Benz, Gordon Wagner, he was back in the news again because he was talking about interior design. I guess wherever he was at, I'm assuming this was probably just one long conversation about design and the current design of cars. And remember, he was talking about AI is going to take over the design now and what the future can hold. And so he was talking about interior design right now because on Mercedes-Benz, like EQS line, it has that thing called Hyperscreen, which was like a giant screen on top of screens across the front of the car, right? And he said, you have a better and bigger TV at home, right? And the discussion was about whether luxury means more screens, and for him, it means less. Now, I want to say something. He is onto something that I have said before, and that is, yes, there are times that I see stuff in person, like the OLED crazy screen on like the Navigator or the Escalade. It was kind of impressive. But I do understand that when you're talking about a luxury car, if the end result of us talking about luxury is who has the most screens on the dashboard, it's going to look like the Best Buy wall. Okay. It's going to look like when you go into Best Buy, you look over there with the TVs, it's going to look like that. So you're going to get into giant Escalades and Range Rovers and Mercedes-Benz, and you're going to just see screens on the dash and just think that that shouldn't be luxury. I do think that he's smart because if you look at how Bentley and Rolls-Royce, and I know that's ultra luxury, but I want to use them as an example, they minimize screens. Bugatti said, and I know it's a $4 million hypercar, but for the example, the Tourbillon, they said, we are purposely removing screens. You want this stuff to stand the test of time. They wanted to see it on the concourse of Pebble Beach or Monterey Car Week, and they wanted to see it there years to come and not be like, oh, we forgot to update the software on the iDrive or whatever it is, and now it doesn't look like nothing. It's just a blank screen because we don't got the software for it. So I think it is smart to kind of reduce how many screens you have because how is it going to last? And I know most people that buy these cars that have the means to just go get an EQS for over $100,000 aren't worried about what this car is going to do in 10 years. They're going to get rid of it in 3 or 2 and just say, I'm on to the next thing. But for the longevity of cars to be passed out into the used market, if all these cars are coming down later, like right now you can buy a used S-Class that isn't overrun by all these crazy screens into regular pedestrian levels of cost. Now, I'm not saying the maintenance is any cheaper, but I'm just saying you can get yourself into an S-Class for the low skis, okay, depending on the year. But imagine now when we get later and it's all everything is just giant screens, and you got to replace the screen for thousands of dollars. It's not going to be a good look. But what he is saying is switch gear, integration. What I have said is my opinion about how cars look when they design them for the interior and these screens to just integrate them, I don't know, more elegantly. Like just have it in there where it's nice and clean. And I can understand that, especially from Mercedes. I mean, it's to me, it's like a party trick. If I go into there and I see the hyperscreen, I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know how often I want to keep driving the car and it's just blasting me in my eyeballs with blue light and screen all day long. I think I would probably get tired of that. And so him discussing it is saying that if internally Mercedes is understanding that, we got to kind of tweak some things, then he is on to the right path. Because I've said it before, and I think that some manufacturers are recognizing it and doing better with interior design that can stand the test of time, as opposed to just doing away with everything, slapping a screen on the dashboard and telling you that it was a minimal design. That's my opinion. I don't think it looked that great. Now, there was some cool news, getting into some more exciting cars, just some ideas. Ford finally basically not patented, but they trademarked the name Mach 4. Now, about 30 podcasts ago or more now, I was talking about the Mustang sedan. And the Ford boss was at some conference and said, I can see us making a four-door Mustang, manual, sports sedan. And so the Mark IV nameplate came out. Everybody was like, yo, this sounds like they're about to make a sedan. If there was a time for Ford to strike, now is the time. Because there isn't a four-door V8 powered sports sedan that you can buy. The Charger doesn't exist. The upcoming Charger with the inline Hurricane 6 will have a four-door variant, but that's a twin turbo inline 6. I'm not saying it won't be good, but it also is interesting to think about the idea of a Mustang sedan, a sports sedan, because one, I would guess it wouldn't be as heavy as the Charger was. It's definitely going to be lighter than the current Charger, especially the EV one. But to think about that in a manual sports sedan, they showed like a couple renders I'm gonna throw on the screen here, and these renders didn't look bad. I don't think the car would look like this, but they didn't look bad. But to think about that type of V8 sports car, that type of sedan right now in this market, there's a massive market for it. I think that would actually start selling maybe more than the coupe. Because now you got people that have families or want some utility that are like, I've always liked Mustangs. I just don't want to deal with a two-door car. I got some friends. I like to take road trips. I want to be able to throw my dog in the back. If they make one that looks like the S650, because I like the way that one looks. I know everybody doesn't. But if you have that styling on a four-door, you can actually fit some comfortable adults in the back. And hopefully they don't turn it into like just a four-seater. Just make it a five-seater. Like, I get it. I know you're trying to make it sportsy, sports sedan, this and that, Mustang. Just make the two outer bucket seats kind of mold and to look like the front ones and just have a center seat. I'm just saying that because what they end up trying to do is make some big, long console down the middle, and it's just a four-seater. It's like, dog, can you just make it 5 passengers? But just think about that. Mustang 5.0 V8, manual, sedan, basically the same interior. I mean, I would imagine they could use the same chassis and maybe lengthen it a bit, but you're not straying too far from the interior. You're going to use the same one. Like, why change? Why fix what's already working? Don't fix if it ain't broken. Use the interior. You got the transmission. You got the engine. You got the chassis. This is kind of an easy one. And there's nobody in the market to compete with you. The Camaro's dead. The Charger no longer is in a sedan. Well, not no longer in a sedan, but there's no V8 in the sedan. And so you're just out on your own cashing in. GT model version ones, special ones, anyone you want to come up with, you can do it on there and it's going to be money. So I'm hoping that this actually is real and they're going to actually create it. I would actually want to see that. And I know my son, he would be like, yo, a Mustang for the family, sell the GR Corolla now. So now, getting into something that is absolutely ridiculous. And I have to bring up a picture of this because it was so mind-blowing that they made this. I was like, who thought this was going to be a good idea? And that was the Cybertruck. Now, I'm not talking about the Cybertruck in and itself because you already know what that looks like. I'm talking about the company Mansory. Now, we already know they made a wild-looking Persangue. They made wild-looking Ferraris, Bentleys, all types of things. This company is known for the outrageous. That's what they do. Okay, they have a clientele for it. Somehow they haven't gotten a cease and desist from all these companies for the monstrosities that they make, but they are back at it again with the Cybertruck. And this thing, you gotta look at this picture. This is absurd, okay, and not in a good way. Absurd. This is ridiculous. Okay, this thing got forged carbon hood, bumper, flares. It got dual wings in the back, light bar on the roof. This interior is absolutely craziness. Like, who was trying to drive in this like etched pattern, lime, neon green, white, and black? I mean, the Cybertruck on its own, I can kind of get with it because it's just so ridiculous. It's kind of like, okay, cool. You're driving a trapezoid on wheels, okay? A box, a refrigerator. I get it. It's kind of like a party trick, but it's like, fine, you're going to drive around. But to add the Mansory kit to this is crazy. Do you see what this looks like now? Like, besides the fact that it was already a hazard to your ankles and knees, now it's a hazard to people's necks, their foreheads. You got wings stretching out the back. The utility is probably compromised now because you got to load something in the trunk with these winglets out there looking like a TIE fighter. You got bumpers coming out, diffusers for what? You're not downforcing anything. It weighs 1,000+ pounds over and over again, so it ain't going nowhere. It's just a lot. That's all I can say. I don't got much else to say on that. You already know what the Cybertruck is. I'm just saying, if you got the money to dump, and I'm sure every one of these pieces, this entire kit probably is north of like $50,000, $60,000, just slapping on carbon forged pieces onto an aluminum, steel body. And I mean, listen, if you got it, you got it. I mean, if you like it, I love it, I guess. This looks crazy. Now, before I wrap this up, some sad news. The Nissan R35 GTR is done. Nissan Japan is no longer accepting any orders. It is over. The R35 set sail from 2007 on the reveal for the R35 to 2009 it was debuted all the way to 2025. It has been a long road. I mean, long enough that I forget how long this car has been out. Like, I'm thinking it's fairly recent, but only because they keep making the same thing that they have been for all these years. It's been over a decade, almost 2 at the pace they were going. So the R35 is done, but the real story is, are they going to make an R36? And there's been many speculation. They've had the prototype GT Vision cars. They have said that whatever comes out next, when it comes out next, is going to have electrification. Obviously, it doesn't mean it's going to be bad. McLaren W1 has electrification, and so does other mini cars. So you can add it and still match the heritage of the sports car. And I think Nissan is wise to not try to rush this, because the R series of the GTR, I mean, every single one has been a legend. You got the R31s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s. Even if you don't like the 5, it's still a legend of a car for what it can do from a performance standpoint. If you go to Texas 2K, GTRs is out there going absolutely insane. And so if you think about the lineage, they can't just jump into an R36 and it just squanders what they've built all these years. And I have no idea what it would look like and what it would be, but the idea of Nissan doing one is probably very, very far away, because I just talked about their finance problems. They're trying to make a Nissan Sentra mostly probably to help get some type of sales. The merger didn't go through. They lost money. It's a lot going on. To introduce a halo car that's going to be guaranteed north of 200,000, then that's a lot to ask for when you're really only catering to a very niche market. And you probably got, and they have no motor. There's no engine for it. So they got to develop an engine, figure out the electrification, figure out the battery system, styling, suspension, chassis, tuning. This is, if you ask me, we're about 5 to 7, 10 years out. I don't think we're seeing an R36 anytime soon at all. Unless they had something tucked in their sleeve that I didn't know about. It's looking like this is going to be a long journey until getting an R36. So in the meantime, if you like an R35, I mean, I would suggest you go grab the proper model while you can, because it's not like those prices are going to go down. Once word gets out, they already know they canceled it. But once the years kind of pile on and you realize, oh, we're not really getting one. And if you want something that's simplified to twin turbo motor, R35 is the last one you can get. Now, GR Corolla updates, our favorite segment. Not much. Already did the throttle controller. I'm actually editing that video as I'm recording this podcast. I got a lot of work to do. But I do have some other things that are coming that I have ideas on, suspension-wise. I was talking to somebody on YouTube that commented on my page, and we were just having a discussion about coilovers. And he or she, I don't know who this person is, but the discussion was talking about the cost of coilovers and what to get. And I've been in this weird space when it comes to coilovers on this car to decide, like, how far do you go for a street car? Like, my purpose of the channel is to show people I'm building a street car. I'm not building a track car. I'm not building something that is just every single part has to be the top, most expensive version. And coilovers is this weird place to be at, because you can't go cheap. You go super cheap, you end up with some trash, the joint breaks on you and you hit a pothole and it's all bad. Then you got the super high end part of it and you're like, okay, did I go that high? Then you got like medium grade, medium high. It's a lot of places. Like you can go HKS, $2,600 for some coilovers, Olin's, you can go Annex, you can go MCS. Then you can kind of get down to others like BC, or maybe go up a little bit more, maybe like TN. And there's just many options like Cusco. There's just a lot of options in place there. And I'm like, okay, what makes sense to go? I have some ideas I don't want to give away yet that I think I want to try. And I think I want to be just a test bed for the person to say, hey, I'm going to show you an option that's not going to break the bank and it still rides well and performs exactly like you want. That's kind of what I'm trying to find out. Olin's and Annex and HKS, I know they perform well because of the cost, price point. I've ridden in one and installed one as well. So I know those are going to perform good. But like, where is the reviews and the information on the ones that are a step down, not in quality, not in performance in regards to the cost and the company that makes it? Just because it's a little bit cheaper does not mean it's a bad performing product. But there isn't much out there. So I'm gonna have to be that person. But it was a good conversation that I was having, because I was like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense, because it is something that is currently missing that I've noticed, that I've been trying to see and get reviews on. And I guess I don't find any, and it means I got to be that guy. Now, that's that. I'll figure it out when I get to that point, but we are moving along. We're trucking along. We're getting closer and closer to episode 100. Episode 100 is kind of a big deal because I want to change up what you see. And I've said it before, and I keep saying this so that I can remind myself about it. But we're getting close, and I'm not stopping, okay? The podcast is doing exactly what I wanted to do. It's my outlet. It's my joy. I like doing it. This is always a good time. And so until then, until next week, do as you wish and do as you may. Once again, you are here for CarQuicks Podcast. It's Cameron Biggs, your host. I'm going to see y'all around next week. Peace.